Okay, people, we are looking at Frankenstein. This is, man, it's a big Netflix production, right? And it is from, beloved filmmaker Guillermo del Toro. He wrote and directed, you know what I mean? The film is then produced by, who have we got? Scott Stubber, J. Miles Dale, and Guillermo del Toro. We then have got line production from Melissa Girotto. Alexandra Desplat handles the score. Dan Lawston is on cinematography. It's all edited by Evan Schiff. Robin D. Cook was behind the casting, right? Production design, we have Tamara Devrel. We've got Brant Gordon, Celestria Kimmins, and Enna O'Sullivan on art direction. Set decoration is all Shane Vayu. Kate Hawley is costume design. Our hair and makeup, we have Alexandra Anger, Gary Archer, Tori Binns, Samantha Brulot, Rona May Campbell, Kevin Carter, Katrina Shavanke, Chris Cooper, Charlotte Delete, Alana Dickey, Kayla Dubialas, Madeline Drowell, Santino Ferez, Nim Follis, Cleona Fury, Glenn Hetrick, Michelle Monaco Hetrick, Mike Hill, Emily Hilton, Deanna Estrada Hudson, Sean Hunter, Samantha Jack, Patricia Keegram, Mandy Ketchson, Marta Kowalski, Georgia Ladadik, Megan Manny, Scott McGregor, Ashley McIntosh, Heather Muir, Steve Newburn, Tim Nolan, Ruth Parry, Monica Pavez, Emma Lee Porter, Lucy Primrose, Richard Redlefishish, Keely Ridgewell, Dawn E. Rivard, Oriana Rosie, Jordan Samuel, Hazel D. Smith, Thalia Sparrow, Rebecca Louise Steele, Michael J. Walsh, Kristen Wayne, Mariana Coletta, Louise Dugan, Erin Jenkins, Laura McGowan Faulkner, and Christina Patterson. Okay, so that is all of that. Then we have got... Let's take a look further down. And... Okie dokie. Boy, there's a load of people working on this film. So our stunts, we have Alex Armbuster, Bart Badverich, Jason Lee Bell, Spencer Berman, Brandon Blash, Mig Banu Cruz, Sebastian Brutago, Johnny Keynes, Boston Camilleri, Sharon Canvas, Dan Chapman, Brent Connolly, Daniel Cudmore, Nicholas Daines, Trevor D. Groot, Colin Decker, Elizabeth Donker Curtis, James Eddy, Dorian John Farmer, Cam Fergus, Carl Fulton, Corbin Fox, Jean Frenton, Yvette Gonda, Dylan Jagerski, Riley Jones, Dave Judge, Stephanie Julian, Kanashana Kerr, Jean-Francis Lachapelle, Maxime Laurin, Nick Longhurst, Thomas Lerber, Jake Lube, Di McDonald, Josh Maloney, Richard Marks, Catalin McNeary, Jeff Misch, Lee Morrison, Michael Murray, Kenny Parent, Eric Paul Haas, Gannon Raki, Dylan Rampola, Baz Reistma, Maxime Savararia, Mark Schneider, Jeff Scoville, Vias Skretus, John Steed, Brendan Stevenson, Don Stockford, Kimberly Sutton, Nicholas Van Burk, Jonathan Vellner, Violet Virgo, Marshall Virtue, Al Virgin, Tyler Williams, Adam Winlow Smith, Jamie James Youngblood, Ellie Zagadaski. Yo, so yeah, they were all behind the, just the amazing stunts and, things that we see. Because there's fights, explosions, there's all manner of things, right? So our cast, we have got Oscar Isaac as Victor Frankenstein. His brother William is played by Felix Camera. We have got their dad Leopold, played by Charles Dance, right? Who else do we have? Okay, so the mother is played, which is crazy, right? The mum, Baroness Claire Frankenstein, is played by Mia Goth, right? And Mia Goth also plays Lady Elizabeth Harlander, William's fiance, which, yeah, interesting. I mean, to be honest, looking at them both in here, I didn't think, oh, that's the same person, right? So a lot of great stuff was done with hair and makeup. So the creature, the monster, is played by Jacob Elordi. A young version of Victor is played by Christian Convery. We also have got Christopher Waltz as Henrik Harlander, Elizabeth's dad. We got David Bradley as a blind man. Captain Anderson is brought to life by Lars Mikkelsen. We have got young Hunter, played by Kyle Gatehouse. Okay, so the older version of Hunter. Let's take a look. Alright, can't find him. But Anna Marie, who is the granddaughter of Hunter. I think Hunter's the blind man, right? She is played by Sophia Galasso. Professor Kemper, right, is played by Ralph Ineson. The Executioner is played by Bern Gorman. Who else do we have? Chief Officer Larson, played by Nikolaj Likas. Dum dum dum. Who else? Dum dum bing bing bing. Joachim Flustrop plays Dr. Hudson. Professor Stoked is played by Peter Millard. Professor Moros, played by Peter McNeil. Gord Rand plays the silversmith. Harlander's butler is played by Kenton Craig. Torferson, played by Anders Yates. Nymph is played by Shian Denvonen. A young William is played by Rafe Harwood. Yes. Our weird dark angel that we see is played by Roberto Campanella. Yeah, I mean, that's the main lot of people. So the gist of the film, Victor Frankenstein, a brilliant but egotistical scientist, brings a creature to life in a monstrous experiment that ultimately leads to the undoing of both the creature and his creator and his tragic creation. So, this is an adaptation, I think most of you probably know, of Mary Shelley's classic Frankenstein. It has been adapted so many times in so many different ways, in a future, right, contemporary times, right? So many people have done this. And we'd heard for years that Del Toro, one of his passion projects was Frankenstein. So when you finally, gets the nod, right, and you hear it's coming and it's coming via Netflix, it's just like, okay, so how will this be done, right? How will this be done? It was one of the films I was hoping to see during the London Film Festival, but injury and illness got in the way of that, which was frustrating. It's now dropped on Netflix though, so I'm like, okay, cool, let's take a look. And I think straight away you see the scale, right? And it looks great. They kind of did a Hunt for Red October thing at the start, right? Which I was worried about. I ain't gonna lie. When I first turned it on, and then we have the subtitles, and I'm just like, no one told me this was subtitled. What the fuck is going on? But like with the Hunt for Red October, right? It starts off in Russian, and then we go into English because it's one of those ones where, right, all of these people are from a different place, but then we go into just we can understand what they're saying, which I think it's always an interesting way of doing things, and I appreciate it. I really do. So we start off with this, and I know I've read the book, but it's been years. So I can't remember how the book actually starts. Right, because as I said, we've seen so many different iterations and different ways people come into the story. But in this one, we have a Victor kind of retelling the story after, being chased all over the place. And I was like, oh, interesting way to start things. Okay, let's see how this goes. And as I say, the scale is vast, right? And we start off in, I'm assuming, the Antarctic. So we have ice and all of this, and we go back to the beginning, right, of a young Victor and his dad, and then William comes into it, and we see like the way the dad treated Victor and the mum, but then he adores William as William is finally born, and so we see all of this, right, and so you can see how neglect and childhood trauma may have shaped Victor, right? Which is never an excuse for certain things, but it's like, okay, that's where maybe some of this comes from, right? So we have all of this, which is intriguing, you know? I mean, Charles Dance is always good, but I think it does kind of show you one of those things because we have all of these interesting characters played very well for the most part, but there isn't a whole lot of depth in any of them, right? We kind of just get surface level, and for some people it works just fine. For others, you do feel that a little bit more would be good because it's kind of informing you on why maybe someone acts the way they do, right? And I think one of the characters that really could have done with a bit more depth is most definitely Lady Elizabeth Harlander, right? William's fiance. I think that would have been useful because, we have all of this story and, I think Elizabeth is a integral part of that. But you do want to see why she's with William, because I think then that talks to why she may do certain things within the film, because we kind of get Elizabeth played as this vapid kind of character. You know what I mean? Like, she isn't that nuanced, but then we have her say certain things later on about how she sees her place in the world and why she's here. And you're like, okay, but do we necessarily get that? Like, there's certain things that should be there all the way through. Now, they might not be voiced until later on, or sometimes not at all. But there should be a hint of that, right? You should be able to see the, the actions and through the body language, certain looks and behaviors go, I feel there's more here, right? I feel this person is, possibly this or that or bum, 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 right? But I don't necessarily think we get that from Goff, So there is that. I think, again, William, we don't necessarily get a lot for that character, which, again, would have been helpful, I think, for the story, So, but we have all of this, there is stuff with Elizabeth's dad, right? Henrik, who, I mean, Christopher Waltz, again, always good. But considering what we find out towards the end about this character, you would think there are certain things that you maybe should be seeing earlier on, I mean, I think the big thing with this film is it isn't sinister, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be edge of your seat scary, because I think Frankenstein is more a psychological thing, right? Because you're pondering the depths of humanity, right? Why people feel that they should be in control of, and the playing at God and all of this kind of thing. So it's more of a psychological piece, which is fine and good. And so I was saying, it doesn't have to be necessarily scary, but you kind of feel there should be a kind of a sinister, caustic lilt to this kind of thing. And that's not really here, right? Even the gothicness of this isn't necessarily here. It looks very nice, right? But it is kind of on the brighter side of things, right? And I guess when you go to the ship, right, everyone looks pretty pristine, right? The uniforms and everything. When you consider how long they must have been on the sea for, right? And there's not a washing machine. You know what I mean? There's not a factory making new uniform. So it could have given us a bit more on that side of things, right? Like the aging of uniform and clothing and all of this, which then informs you on time. They have kind of split the film into parts, right? So we start off with the prelude, then we go to part one, Victor's Tale, and part two is the creature's tale with this kind of wraparound story and finale also there. Which it's interesting when you see it from these different perspectives, but there isn't necessarily a whole load of different things when dealing with these perspectives. And I think sometimes when you're playing with perspectives, it could always be interesting when you kind of have a different approach to the cinematography. And I don't think we necessarily get that, or even with the filters and the look of the film. But we have all of these things. There are elements in this film, right? I guess with the wolves. I mean, wolves don't really act like that. You know what I mean? Like, unless... Now, any animal, when you think about their typical hunting patterns and behaviors, anything can go a bit off the rails when you factor in like crazy hunger, right? So if the characters are really just so ravenous, yes, they may do different things, but the way we have the wolves acting in this, it is a little like, not sure about that, right? I think you also then look at other things, right? Like the monster, our creature. Yeah, he is a kind of like a Lego piece. Yeah, I mean, he's made up of all of these different bits and parts and all of that, which we know. But there's certain things like the head. The head kind of is one thing, right? That's kind of what we're shown. So you kind of go, why are there so many patchwork pieces on the face? If it was all one part, right? That kind of aspect of it doesn't necessarily add up. And also the speech of our monster, because it's kind of like the monster would be essentially a bit like a deaf person, because when you haven't heard language, you do speak kind of differently, Or even if, like, it is someone who English isn't their first language, there should be this kind of different speech pattern and approach to speech from our monster, which we don't necessarily get. And I think just little details like that would bring this new element to the fore, right? And just give the creature this different edge, which we don't get. You know, it's an interesting take, right? And I think I do like the approach of, you know, Victor being found and then we get the retelling and just all of this. But I don't think this is my favorite iteration of this story. You know, even when you factor in this great cast, this great filmmaker, it's it's interesting, but I don't feel it's something I would come back to time and time again. Right? That's it. I kind of look at it, it's a bit like Del Toro's take on Pinocchio. It's interesting, but not my favorite iteration. Not something I go back to. But I guess this is one of those things where if you're a big fan of Del Toro and his approach to storytelling, right, that in itself may compel you to, come to this. Thinking of other things, right? I think it kind of plays a bit like something like 28 years later, right? Or like even Bagania, right? Something like that. So I think if you like those films, if you like, as I say, Del Toro's Pinocchio, you might find Frankenstein very compelling. It is now available on Netflix, so you can always delve in, take a little look, go, is this for me? Right? Give yourself a half an hour or so, get to grips of things, and you know. But again, like, if there are other reviewers, there are other people that might, align with you on like Del Toro's work. Maybe you check that out and go, oh, okay, yes, it feels like this could be for me. But it is, as I say, it's out now. So that is my viewpoint on Frankenstein.